Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Wyndham Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is 6:30, August 12th, 2020. We are in the Wyndham High School auditorium. Mr. Howell?
Kate Brooks.
Here.
Jenny Butler.
Here.
Janie Cummings.
Here.
Mark Scavone.
Here.
Pete Hensler is joining us remotely. He's on my screen. Hannah Keeney.
Here.
Kate Levier.
Here.
Scott McLean.
Here.
Christina Small.
Here. Will you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Howell, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There are not any adjustments to the agenda tonight. I do want to mention for the public and for the board tonight. First of all, for board members, we do have individual microphones for you tonight so that you're able to hear each other a little bit better. Also for the public, all of our board members are spaced more than 6 feet apart. I know there were some comments made about board members taking off their masks to speak. They are following CDC guidelines, and so there is appropriate spacing. Encouraging people to keep their masks on, same thing with those in the audience, but understand that occasionally you have to take a quick break or grab some water. That's perfectly fine and perfectly within the guidance. And so we also have people who are joining us virtually tonight, and Gary's providing that audio for us, so thank you, Gary, for making that happen. And other than that, I will turn it over to you.
It's time for public input. If you have anything to remark on, if you are public, on items that are not on the agenda, this is your opportunity. Seeing nobody, we'll move on to the first item on the agenda.
I move to accept the RSU 14 2020-2021 school reopening plan and the submission of the minutes of this meeting to the Maine DOE.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Do you want to speak?
Yeah, just for those of you who are listening tonight and for those of you who are here in the crowd, Maine Department of Education requires all school districts to develop a reopening plan, and as part of that reopening plan to include elements for full distance learning, a hybrid, and then for green, which would be greater participation in on-campus learning. So that is a requirement. We are not required to submit our full plan to the Department of Education. I know many of you have had a chance to see it on the website, but we are required to submit the minutes. And by submitting those minutes, if we are required to do any attendance waivers because of things that may happen this year related to the pandemic, then we have an approved plan on file with the Department of Education.
Any board discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, March 14.
Janet, before we move on,
Yep.
I just want to make sure that we can record Pete's vote.
Okay. So we're going to record Pete's vote.
I think Pete is muted at the moment. Christine? Pete Hensler? Christine, I do not have his audio.
Yes, I vote aye.
Thank you, Pete.
Okay, March.
Okay, I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent that the district will open in a hybrid model with an option for distance learning for families at
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Seeing none. Any more discussion?
Yes, I have. I was a public high school teacher for 31 years and retired when my mom had a stroke 6 years ago. Then ended up taking a part-time position at USM. The last 3 months of my USM teaching was the most difficult teaching ever in my career. It's very difficult to do mathematics online, and all of us who are educators, whether they be at pre-K through 12, adult ed, or university, had to switch on a dime to be able to do their very best for their students. I think that the plan that has been presented is the best of a bad situation that we all have to deal with. It's not ideal. It's not what any of us would really want for our students or for our own children if we had children in school, but I think it's the best that we've got. With some additional planning time to be able to prepare, I think it will be better than it was last spring because we already have some kinks that we know about that can be worked out. I just think it's the best we can do, and we have to be flexible as a board, we have to be flexible as educators, and thank you for all the work that you have done. It's difficult, it's hard, but thank you.
Anna?
Back to Prize, I'm going to talk. I think this is the hardest vote that I've ever had to sit here and take. Personally, as you know, I look at it as a mom, as I look at it as a board member, it is the hardest one that I've ever had to sit here to do. And part of what makes it so hard for me personally is because I have nothing but respect for our administration and our board and our district. So anytime I feel like I'm even a little bit disagreeing, I feel like I'm, that's a struggle for me. So to sit with it for the time that we've sat with it and to still have that feeling of disagreement, of just not being all the way there, really means something to me. I think I've been pretty vocal. I think, I really believe oftentimes we find ourselves in a position where we're looking to see what's working for others and what others are going to do. And I believe in this moment we really have an opportunity to really do something different and really do something good and something impactful. We have enthusiastic and loving and really capable staff that have stepped forward and said, let me give this a try, let me do this, let me show you what I can do from a virtual classroom standpoint. And in my mind, there's still too many unknowns of bringing everyone back together for me to feel really on board with going with a hybrid model. The folks close to me have heard me like a broken record saying I can live the rest of my life being part of the board that was too cautious to send everyone back to school early, but I don't want to spend a day being the part of the board that was overzealous and people were sick, or God forbid we lost somebody because we were too overzealous in getting everyone back. We've been really fortunate as a board that we've had such foresight to make sure, and I can't take credit for it, it was boards before me, to make sure we have enough devices for the entire student body of RSU 14 to have a 1-to-1 ratio, so should we need to go to a virtual platform, we can at the very least supply them with that. So for me, there's just still too much risk and still too much unknown to be 100% on board with this hybrid model, and that's not to discount the work that's gone into it and the planning and the preparation, because I feel nothing but respect for that. But for me, unless somebody has something drastically different to share that might change my mind, I'm not there, I can't.
Thank you. Anyone else want to opine? Scott?
This is definitely one of the hardest decisions that I think pretty much any of us have had to make. And I'm not just talking from a board perspective.
Scott, your mic is not on.
I think you're, you got a bad cable.
I'm pretty loud. Can everybody hear me?
Can you hear me now? Sorry. And what I was saying is that this isn't just a really difficult decision from a board perspective. This is an unbelievably difficult decision as a human being. I'm going to just kind of, because it's really hard to try and put in format what I really want to say here. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of opinions out there. And it doesn't matter what decision this board collectively makes. There is going to be praise from one side, and there's going to be judgment on the other side. It doesn't matter what my opinion is, because it's going to be the wrong opinion for a lot of different people out there. There is so much information out there with this day and age, with social media. Some of it is good, solid information. Some of it isn't. Some of it you don't know if you should believe. Some of it you do believe. There's contradicting information out there. So, that being said, if a student is sitting at his desk and he's more than 6 feet apart from somebody else, and he takes his mask off, what judgment is he going to face? Because according to this, he's allowed to. The Maine CDC says that no more than 50 people in a room. That could change Friday. The Maine CDC could say there's now 100 people. Doesn't make any sense to me that you can have mass protests, but then Eric's church can't have more than 50 people. I'm not a fan of what Maine CDC has come down and said, but then the state has turned around and said you can go green. That is also contradicting. Nothing makes sense. The numbers don't make sense. So, I apologize for anybody that I may offend. But this is America. And I have rights. And so does my kid. And I want her to go to school. I want her to be able to play volleyball. I want my neighbor's kid to be able to play football. I want our kids to be able to sit in the cafeteria and giggle and laugh, as we all do. But if I vote for that, am I the bad guy? So, at this point, I can honestly tell everybody sitting in this room and anybody listening on Zoom, I still don't know how I'm going to vote on this. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, did you want to say something? No.
This is crazy hard. This is, other day that really struck me. We're all in the same storm, but we're not all in the same boat. And that really resonated with me because I really have 100%, 1,000% respect for parents who are advocating for what they think is right for their child. And that's your job. Thank you for doing that. I don't know your children. I don't know your situation. I don't know your hardships. I don't know what plan would be hard for you or easy for you. I'm a grandmother of 2 kiddos that are in the main system. And I'm a mother of a teacher in the main system. And a mother-in-law of an administrator in the main system. And let me tell you, I'm hearing it from all sides, not just as a board, but from the teacher's perspective, from the administrative perspective, from a mother's perspective. There is no good answer for this. I have tremendous, unbelievable respect for our staff. To turn on a dime on March 13th was nothing short of a miracle, in my opinion, to try to provide some kind of education to our students. Never did it before. Quite frankly, we haven't done any of this before. So I thank you all for giving us grace, because we're going to make mistakes. We are. We've never done it before. There's a lot we don't even know. As Scott said, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of in this whirlpool, and I can't hang on in a lot of ways, because things change so rapidly, and information changes so rapidly. I mean, I went out and bought like a bazillion gaiters for my husband, thinking, oh good, this is easy. Now I hear that gaiters aren't that great. I mean, from one minute to the next, you really, you're just trying to hang on. And when I come down to it, I hear the concerns. I mean, I feel like I have this giant moral duty for safety. I do. Safety is at the core of everything we do in this district. Safety for our staff, safety for our students. Aside from these board meetings, Janny and I have been in hours and hours and hours of meetings with Chris and Christine and others. Problem solving. What about this? Well, I don't think that. What about this? That's just on that level. On their level, and these 2 people, I was going to say birds, but these 2 people down there, the countless hours, the committees, they aren't the only ones. Staff are involved. Every single person is involved. Bus drivers, the nurses. I just learned the nurses just met with our school doctor. They're on it. It's hard when you're not behind the scenes to know how many details this takes, how hard it is to think of all the details. You don't know what you don't know sometimes. Like I said, whatever this turns out, we're going to make mistakes. This is like creating a whole new world. I mean, the nerd in man went back when Maine became a state in 1820. They had education. We've been doing this for 2 centuries, and basically it hasn't changed that much. Yes, the curriculum and all of that other jazz, but we're still in a square box. We're still in a square number of us. We didn't do virtual. So the challenge is real. I could go on and on about how my heart is racing. I want to do the right thing. As Scott said, I'm not sure there is a good answer. But what I do know and what I do believe at the heart of this is I believe in choice. And I believe giving parents the choice of doing 100% virtual or going hybrid. It's not optimum. It's not 100% virtual. I give you that. But it's choice. And I go back to the survey that, thank you all of the parents, I don't know what it was, like 1,900 parents, something like that. Remarkable. For a survey, that's outstanding. 76% of parents said they would trust us. Again, we're going to make mistakes. That, when I heard that, wow, talk about support, talk about support. And 10% said they wanted to do virtual. And I applaud those parents too. Nobody knows your student or your child better than you and what works for your family. So, at the core of me, with great pause in many respects, and knowing how crazy this every 2-week business is, and finding out, and knowing that, God forbid, some catastrophe comes down, and we immediately have to go to red, because green and yellow are the same. What we're talking about is the hybrid or completely virtual. We had July 31st, green, August 14th, August 28th, September 11th. We haven't talked about the calendar yet, but that's 2, 4, 6, almost 8 weeks. Lots can change in 8 weeks, and we know that. So I think I've rambled enough, but I am supporting the hybrid, knowing it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, knowing that there were going to be incredible challenges. I support it, knowing that we are offering up to the board a new calendar that offers additional PD, because frankly that was a huge concern of mine. I mean, you can only imagine what my daughter's chanting in my ear about prep. So that really resonated with me too. Gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but this is hard. I'm going to do the hybrid. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina?
In Maine, schools is one of the first things that we closed, and it's one of the last things that we're considering reopening. And I feel like it's not analogous to any business that we have. So we basically have no information as to whether following the guidelines that we have set forth is safe. We believe it is, it's the best we can do, but we really don't have any information on whether it's going to work or not, and how are people going to comply with it. Can we get enough compliance for it to be effective? I feel like we can get that information by waiting, by opening an existence plan, by waiting for other districts nearby to open in their hybrid models. I'm sure they'll be very similar to ours, following the main CDC guidelines, and we can see if that has caused outbreaks in school, if it has raised cases across our street. And if it doesn't, then we can confidently say that this is safe for our staff, this is safe for our kids. Let's go to a hybrid model at that point. But right now, I can't take that risk that it's not. And this is coming from a parent who filled out that survey and said I would send my kids to school. Making that decision for my family was comparatively easy. I can't make that decision for our families. I can't make that decision for staff.
Christine?
Okay. I don't want to repeat what everybody else has repeated, but I am going to say that I think that we put our students through enough. The students I'm aware of have had a terrible time since March 13th. They miss school. They want to be back in school. I mean, I have empathy for the parents for both ways. I think this plan covers both ways. If there are parents who feel it is not safe for their child to be there, if their staff that feel it's not safe for them to be there, they have the option of going virtual, which will work. But for the students who need to be back in school, for the teachers who need to be able to see their students, this is a horrible decision. There is no right or wrong. We're going to take a jump. This is a leap of faith. That's really all it is. I keep thinking of the poor kids that are doing transitions, kids going from the elementary grades over to middle school, from middle school to high school. What are they going into if they're not going physically into a building in something they know? I think they need to be able to have contact with staff. So I will be voting for this because I think the hybrid model gives everybody the option of doing one or doing the other. It's not tying anybody down, and I don't think it's making a mandate that you have to. So I will vote for it.
Anyone else?
I have a couple of questions. I swear I'm not going to talk. Just questions. Chris, were you able to find out how many, what % of the total families we have in the district responded to that survey? I know we have a number of how many responded, but I don't know if that's 2,000 out of 3,000 or 2,000 out of a million. I mean, obviously it's not that, but.
We had 2,100 responses. In reviewing the data this week, for some buildings, it was close to 90% of parents that responded. We did have a building, which I think actually after they reviewed their data, was in the high 70s. We do have a communication that's going out later on, whether this week, whether it be Friday or Monday, that basically reports back to parents, here's what you reported, here's what we have on record. Do you still want to continue this, or if you'd like to make changes, to contact the principal. But we have a few people we did not hear from, and we'll be reaching out to them.
Awesome, thank you, Chris, I appreciate that. And also, just out of curiosity, when we met last week, we talked a little bit about support for staff. Should we go back in a hybrid model? I think one of the things I had asked about was around sick days and the need to use those up should something happen, and what's going to happen to the staff. I know we mentioned the Corona Relief Act. I'm just curious if there's any more information available yet to what that looks like. I mean, the last thing that I want is to say, teachers, you have to go back, but if you get sick, you're kind of SOL.
No, there's, and I did not have a chance to share with the board, but I can share later. There is a spreadsheet of all the different options that are available. Should someone not be able to return to work because of their sickness, that there are options. The other thing that I would also throw out there is that we are doing our absolute best that for those individuals who have health concerns, that they will have other remote abilities to work within the district, and that they will continue to be able to meet with students, but differently. We know different people within our district have different challenges when it comes to health, and we're going to do all that we can to support them.
And just one more question, I think. Have we taken a look at and prepared for sort of the mental health supports that are going to be needed both by staff and the student body? It's been a stressful few months anyway, but the potential, all the what ifs that are out there, should one of those terrible what ifs occur, and we need to offer up support to staff and student body, what sort of preparations have we made?
That's one of the topics that the social emotional learning team had been discussing prior to in May and June as we were meeting. That's something that the school psychologists and social workers have continued to reach out about. One of the pieces on the distance learning site that's being developed has information and resources surrounding social emotional learning and trauma, not just for students, but staff and families, and how we can make sure everyone re-enters with those pieces in mind, and they provide time and space for that learning to happen and for the support for those who need it to happen.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your answers.
We just, as a reminder, we have a message from those joining us via Zoom. So if you are speaking with a mask on, it's harder for them to hear you. So if you just put the mic right up to your mask, or you can take it off, either one. But thank you. They're struggling to hear some of our comments.
Thank you. Pete has a question.
Go ahead, Pete.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
All right. First of all, I want to apologize for not being there in person. This is a really important meeting, but injuries prevented me from physically being able to be there. And with that being said, what I'm going to do for my comments is that working okay, Chris?
You're good now. I'm not going to talk, Pete.
What I'm going to do for my comments is I'm just going to read from a letter that I wrote when I didn't think I could attend the meeting in any capacity. So please bear with me for that. Dear Mr. Howell and RSU 14 School Board, we are writing to you as the parents of 3 students in the district. We want to commend Mr. Howell and all of the staff who worked diligently to develop the comprehensive reopening plan that was presented last week. We know that this work began at the beginning of the school year and has not stopped. The amount of scenarios and items of consideration for a district as large is overwhelming and not always apparent to those who are not involved. So we want to thank you for the hard work and the level of detail that was produced. It was said early on in this pandemic that these are uncharted waters in unprecedented times, and this is still the case. While much has been learned about the COVID-19 virus, we learn all the time, including recent studies that reveal potential long-term effects on the heart.
Pete, can you stop for a second? Can you hear him?
I think, do you have other computers that aren't muted right there or nearby?
No, they're all muted.
Can I go on?
No, you're getting a...
You're getting feedback. Do you want me to read it, Pete?
Pete, do you want Janny to read your letter?
Yeah, if she has it available, that'll be fine.
Dear Mr. Howell and the RSU 14 Board, we are writing to you as the parents of 3 students in the district. We want to commend Mr. Howell and all of the staff who worked diligently to develop the comprehensive reopening plan that was presented last week. We know that this work began at the end of last school year and has not stopped. The amount of scenarios and items of consideration for a district this large is overwhelming and not always apparent to those not directly involved. So we want to thank you for the hard work and level of detail produced. It was said early on in the pandemic that these are uncharted waters and unprecedented times, and that is still the case 5 months later. While much has been learned about the COVID-19 virus, we are still learning more all the time, including recent studies that reveal potential long-term effects on the heart. Also, things that we thought to be true, such as transmission from hard surfaces, have changed over time, and early recommendations for not wearing masks changed to masks now being essential. While the district's hybrid reopening plan provides for procedures and protocols to greatly reduce the risk of transmission, we can't help but wonder if it's really worth the risk at this point. To us, the hybrid model still presents unnecessary risk and requires a lot of extra work for what amounts to be a reduced amount of teacher instruction time for the students. We would prefer to see the district start the school year in a fully remote model, and here is our rationale. In the hybrid model, students are only having teacher instruction interaction 2 times per week. In the fully remote model, the students would be led by their teachers at least 4 days per week. Furthermore, on the in-school days of the hybrid model, instruction time is going to be cut into by required mask breaks, accommodating potential staggered and start and dismissal times, etc. Starting the year in full remote would allow all students and families to experience the improvements made to virtual learning. It has been said many times how much work has been put into developing the virtual learning plan, and that it would look much different than what the students experienced last year. Why not have everyone see what it's like? This would help families better decide if they want their kids in the schools or at home. It would help the district test system constraints and ensure everyone has acceptable access. And it would prepare everyone in the event that we are required to move to red status. In the hybrid model, the students would not be exposed to virtual teacher-led instruction. September can be a pretty warm month, as we learned last year. While we understand the improvements that have been made to the air circulation in the schools, there are still some buildings that don't have air conditioning and can get really hot. We worry about the health and comfort of students in those buildings having to wear masks while sweating. We know how uncomfortable and distracting that can be. Delaying the start of in-person instruction could get us into the cooler months, which would make the mask wearing requirement more tolerable. By putting off an immediate return to in-person instruction, it would allow us time to monitor other districts that do start with some form of in-person instruction and learn from their experiences. We're already seeing in other parts of the country schools that have reopened and then had to close within days due to outbreaks. While Maine is in a much different situation in terms of COVID causes, there is still some benefit to being patient and watching what goes on around us first. We know that this is not an easy decision to make. In fact, it's probably the toughest decision that most districts have ever been faced with. No matter what the decision is, there are going to be a lot of dissatisfied people, and we understand the other side of things. We understand the benefits of in-person instruction. We understand the value of students interacting with their peers. We understand that some students learn better in person, and we understand that the demands and pressures put on families when their children are not in school. There are valid arguments to be made for each side, and nobody is right or wrong because everyone's circumstances are different. What it comes down to for us is that we want to minimize the risk by keeping students and staff at home, maximize the number of days that students are interacting with their teachers, and allow the teachers to put their entire focus on one form of instruction. Let's be patient, and let's see the effectiveness and value of all the hard work that went into developing an improved online learning experience. We can then reevaluate after a month or so to see what is working or not working for us and the districts around us. Thank you for your consideration. Pete and Nicole Hensler. Thanks, Pete. I have done a lot of thinking, and like all of us, I've also done a lot of listening. I listen to my friends who are teachers. I listen to kindergarten to high school teachers. The first thing I want to say is the first thing they wanted me to consider is that their focus is on the safety and care of their students. I talked to all of them individually, and they all said the same thing. That's not a shock. There was a wide variety of differences of opinion about in-person a hybrid model or a distance model. It seemed to me that if they were in middle and high school, a distance model could work. Also, middle school people said that they could make either one work. The kindergarten through third grade people had a hard time with that. When I talked to parents, kindergarten through third grade parents that I talked to, think their children need to be in school. High school parents that I talked to, some want their children home. Several are afraid for their child's mental health if they don't go to school. I understand everything that Pete has said and that everyone has said, and I know that we all approach this with the same concern for each child, for each staff member. We know the Herculean amount of work that everyone here has put in. In the end, for me, it is this. If we have a hybrid model, you can choose to keep your children home if you feel that it's the safest place for them. If we have a distance model, if you want to have your child in school, you can't choose that. So for me, the choice is for a hybrid model. I also understand that there is no right answer. There is no perfect. There is no perfection. And we have to live with that. Would anyone else like to speak? Okay.
Okay, I didn't want to be totally silent or have anyone take that my silence as not having some thoughts on this and listening to everyone. I have been fully supportive of our kiddos going back to school from the beginning. I think that's where they need to be. I'm really supportive of this because there is that choice for distance for the families that don't feel comfortable sending their child to school for whatever reason. I can't, in good faith, say that I would not support the hybrid because I just can't get the picture out of my mind of that child who needs to get out of their house for one reason or another, whether it's a bad home and school is that safe place for them. Heck, my kid wants to go and get out of the house and she's in a safe home. So I just can't, I just can't get the picture of that child out of my head. There's also the other, in some of the work that I do with some statewide work with child cares, there's some places that won't be able to support a district that has all of their kids in a distance learning model. So now we have parents that may lose their child care. I don't know if that is the case here. I know it is in other towns because they can't manage 6 different Zooms for 7 different kids at 5 different times. At least with this model, it's giving them some work to do on those days that they're not in school that doesn't require them sitting in front of a computer. I hear what everyone's saying. I get it. But I just, I can't go home to my 8-year-old and tell her I chose 100% distance learning. I think she'll disown me as her mother. She wants to go back. She wants to see her friends. She knows it's going to look different. Everything looks different now. We know it's not ideal. but our kids can adapt. They've adapted so well to all of this, so much better than the adults have adapted to it. I mean, I sat there and watched my daughter have her mask on for 2 hours while she sat there while I was getting my hair done. She was fine. She was perfectly fine. She had no break. She was fine. Again, I know that my kid is not, every child is different. There are some kids that will absolutely struggle with it, and I understand that. But there's also, there's kids that won't. There's kids that need to get out of their house. There's kids that will thrive in this classroom. There's kids that will be fine with distance learning. At least with this, it gives parents that option. And my heart goes out to teachers. I get it that you're nervous. This is different. It's going to be really, really hard. But it's been hard for lots and lots of people, and we've all adapted and have been resilient. And I have so much faith in our district that they will support teachers and they will support our professionals through this. So I will be absolutely supporting hybrid.
Okay, as I understand it, if we're ready to vote, we are voting up or down the hybrid model. If we vote for the hybrid model, then we move on. If we vote against the hybrid model, or if this does not pass, then we will have to have another motion. Okay? So,
I just wanted to do a roll call so Pete can hear.
yes, let's do roll call.
So Pete can hear all the
Okay.
votes.
Yes.
So board members, if you'd please use your microphone. Scott, I'm sorry, yours is not working currently.
I think you'll hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, Kate Brooks,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Janie Cummings,
Yes.
Marge Scavone,
Yes.
Pete Hensler, Pete, can you repeat?
I did not hear what we're actually voting on.
We're voting on the motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent that the district will open in a hybrid model with an option for distance learning for families as outlined at this meeting.
Okay, do we not have any public comments or?
Yes, we have. We've had an opportunity for public comment.
Okay, that's it. I'm gonna vote respectfully nay.
Thank you.
Anna Keeney,
I'm sorry, but no.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yay.
Christina Small,
Oh. Okay. So what's the total?
I believe it was 6-3, correct?
Okay. 6 yays, or 6 yeses, and 3 noes, so the motion carries. Kate Levier, could you give us a second? Oh, first, we're going to discuss the amended 2021 school calendar, and Mr. Howell will explain it.
Sorry for members of the public that you don't have a copy in front of you. Board members, you have a copy that was in your packets. Those copies have been updated, and the update on those is that Wednesday early release days would no longer be happening while we're in a hybrid model. Those would be full days of schools, and full day of school, and I believe on your calendar they're indicated as half days. So depending on the outcome of tonight, and we have an updated calendar, that will be cleaned up. Go ahead, Marge.
Both of the calendars are exactly the same. I know that the start date is going to be different on one.
Marge, can you please use your mic?
Oh, sorry. My calendar, both my calendars are exactly the same. They both have the exact same start date of Tuesday the 8th.
My apologies on the packet. The board package you received electronic was correct. Let me just explain to everybody what the difference is. So first of all, some rationale is that one thing that we've heard loud and clear, and I've received emails on it, also heard it loud and clear from staff members, that the 3 days that were originally planned into the school calendar were not going to be sufficient enough for people to not only cover safety requirements and get used to protocols and to do some additional work in their classrooms, as well as meeting some of the district PD needs for the opening, that the 3 days that were planned weren't nearly enough. And so looking at how do we build in more teacher time, and how do we make sure that that district time gets done and is not going to become overwhelming for staff members as we look to open up the school year. So the two proposals that you have in front of you, one would be a start date of September 8, and the second one would be a start date of September 9. And this would be putting us back a little later in the month, past Labor Day, with a start date of September 9th, which would be my recommendation, would be that we would have an opportunity on that Wednesday for one group to come in. Thursday, we'd have another opportunity for the second group to come in, and then Friday would be a chance for staff to work through, problem solve any issues that may have presented themselves during those first 2 days of school as we get ourselves up and running. The other option, if we were to start on the 8th, would have us looking to then run both groups 4 days that week, and that would reduce one of the dissimilar days within the hybrid for the first quarter. But after listening to some staff members and getting some feedback, that it seems to make more sense to wait until that Wednesday, start on the Wednesday, have a couple days within school, have a chance to really work through some things, and then start as a full week that following week.
So your recommendation is, and then if we were to vote now, your recommendation would be for a start date with children on the 9th. Okay. Anybody want to opine? Right, then, yes.
I just have a question. I understand that with the Monday holiday, we needed to switch the days, the AV days. I'm just concerned about how that will work for families for childcare. If we're looking at being on this set schedule, essentially, I think in my mind, I had a set schedule that it was either my child was either Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday, Friday, and that was the way it would be for the rest of the time. And then I noticed that it switches so that the Monday, Wednesday group then goes Tuesday, Thursday. Am I reading this wrong? I just have a little bit of a concern with that. I don't know if you've gotten feedback from families on how that would work, if it would work.
I don't think that's...
Am I reading it wrong?
No, you actually, sir, and my apologies for this. You are seeing a typo in the print. Everything stays Monday, Wednesday. That would not change.
Okay, because once we get to October,
That is a misprint
then
and
now
miscopy.
now
Yes.
it's off. Okay. Okay, perfect. I didn't like the way it was.
No, you-
It was bothering me.
You are correct, Kate, and it would continue on that it would be Monday, Wednesday, and the Tuesday, Thursday.
Okay. So it will always be, they will always be a Monday, Wednesday cohort. This then is incorrect.
Correct.
Okay,
The one
thank
that
you.
was in your board package should be correct.
Oh, okay. This is the one, I printed this one off from home.
Right.
So maybe that's why.
Hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's have a motion first, and then we can have public comment and more discussion.
Okay. I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent regarding the amended start date as presented at this meeting.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Marge had her hand up first. Any board discussion?
So when a holiday falls on a Monday, that Monday will be moved to Friday, so that they still have their timing? That's a question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to sound like it wasn't.
No, and Marge, the calendar that's in front of you goes to the end of October with the AB that continues on. A couple of reasons for doing that. One is that the purpose of a hybrid is not a destination. A hybrid is kind of a part of the journey as you're going along, and so the whole purpose for doing it is that reevaluating in October to see whether or not we can open fully at that time. Currently in this calendar, the Monday holidays for the ABs, they are not in there through November.
What I'm looking at is October 12th, which is a Monday and a holiday.
So there would be one dissimilar day with that Monday holiday, but then in addition, we have a dissimilar day in Tuesday for voting in Wyndham Middle School and for Wyndham High School.
So on those weeks, the student would be in school one day? I want to make sure I'm following this.
The plan currently with holidays, once we get past Labor Day, is to not have kids come in on Friday.
Okay, so the Monday, the A on the 12th, the week of the 12th, the A students would only be in on Wednesday. This calendar is very confusing.
Yeah, and actually, this is not the calendar in which
Yeah,
I created.
I know, I'm sorry, but it's
And,
not what I have in front of me.
It has been fixed since then, and I apologize for being in your packet, but no, for that particular day, A is always going to be Monday, Wednesday, and B would always be Tuesday, Thursday.
Okay, so that week the students would come to school one day.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make that point, that's all. Thank you.
And let me just also mention, if it might be helpful for board members, I know you have a meeting that's scheduled for next week. If you would like to table this and that we can get the corrected calendar to you, and then you can vote next week. Madam Chair, I'm not sure if that's a direction you want to head in, but
I'm not either. I want to make sure that the staff knows that the start date is the 9th. The start date with kids is the 9th. And I think we can deal with the irregularities of this as it's presented if we vote with our intent to start on the 9th. Is that, can we, if we amend, can we do that?
Well, the motion is for the amended start date, not the full calendar, so.
Right. So let's do that. Okay. That's okay with you, and we can have further information. Anna, did you want to?
I'll ask my question.
Okay. Kate?
Just to make sure the amended is, I've got some things here I'm not clear about. Just want to make sure that the start date, I'd almost feel more comfortable if we put the start date in the motion. And then it's the official deal. Can we do that? Amend it
We can amend it, certainly.
and put that in, or just include that?
We'd have to vote for the amendment. We have to vote to amend.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so do you want to restate your amendment?
Yes.
Okay, Kate?
Okay. It's a lot of pressure. I move to accept the recommendation of the superintendent regarding the amended start date of September 9th, 2020, presented at this meeting.
Okay. So, second, we are now voting on the amendment. So, all those in favor? All those opposed?
I want to give Pete here an opportunity to vote.
Okay.
Pete gives a thumbs up.
Okay. All right, we'll have the superintendent's report. So how was your week, Mr. Howell?
So I just want to start off by, first of all, thanking all of our teachers and administrators and support staff members for the work that they've been doing, and it goes back to March, and work that they did, and many of you saw it eloquently tonight, where they turned on a dime, and they then changed how instruction was done, and did an absolutely fantastic job of learning new things and working through some things, and working their absolute best to make sure that students could be supported through that. And as I mentioned last week, it was May when people started working on the plan for reopening here. And again, to just thank those individuals who've worked in the governance group, and to also thank all the individuals who've been in their classrooms and imagining what spaces look like in a new reality with new requirements, and working to do their absolute best to be as flexible as possible, and again, staying so kid-focused. And so absolutely thankful that they've taken the opportunity to do that. Also want to thank our nursing staff, who I've had a chance to meet with this past week, and for all the hard work that they've done this summer, and as they continue to work through protocols, not only for safety, but protocols within their workspaces to make sure that things are fully prepped for students. Also to our transportation staff, many of you completed the survey. They're now taking that survey and determining what are the best bus routes, who's not coming to school, who's coming to school on certain days, and then how do they best run the transportation system. So a lot of moving parts that are going on here. We have a professional development calendar, which we will be getting out to staff members now that we can move forward with a calendar change that outlines board members. You got a copy of that PD calendar in your packets. But we'll get that out to all the staff members so they get an idea that, yes, there's a mix in there of some time that we're going to need to do some district-wide training, but then also a tremendous amount of teacher time to make sure that classrooms and people are ready to go. Just as an aside, I was on a Zoom call, one of many today, and schools in Maine started today in the county. And so as we have a little bit of time here before we start, we'll have an opportunity to learn a little bit about their reopening and how things went, and some of their practices and protocols. Lastly, I just want to remind the public that every 2 weeks we get an update from Maine CDC as to the transmission rate within communities and within counties across the state of Maine. The next one will come day after tomorrow, and then an additional 2 weeks, and will give us that opportunity to help us with our planning. Again, this is a plan which is flexible, and there may be adjustments that we're going to need to make as we begin to open up the school year. But just want to say to the public is a number of people have been working really, really hard and using all the resources they can to make this as safe as possible. I'm sure there's things that we've missed, and I'm sure there's things that we've blind to, and I certainly appreciate emails and things of people who have suggestions. Please know that those are heard and that we do incorporate those into our planning.
Thank you. Okay.
Chris, given the every 2-week deal, and we're in green, if it's yellow, it's really essentially no change for us. And we're going to communicate that out immediately. If it's red, God forbid it's red, and we find out on August or September 11th, or it's 2 weeks, the 28th, well, after school is starting. We find out on that Friday, we're green, we find out on that Friday, now we're red. So, is the transition immediate to the next Monday? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
That sounds daunting, actually.
No, it's a great question, and Yes, there's flexibility, and the purpose for having a plan is to help you determine what it is that you're going to do should that happen. If we were, and probably the more likely scenario would be that we'd be yellow in one situation, and if things were to move to red, then we would move the district to online and distance learning per that requirement, per that recommendation. And that would be an immediate transition.
Okay, I guess I'm going back to parents, and now it's 100% their kiddos are home, and they have this child care. I just want them to be aware that we turn red from yellow, boom, we're red, and we're not going to be in the buildings. Okay.
Go ahead.
Chris, going in the opposite direction. What happens if the Maine CDC comes out on Friday and says we are now raising the amount of students or anybody, general public, into a gathering space? What changes at that point?
Sure. Those become huge changes for us because it means that we then can bring a higher percentage of students into the building. I mean, take this room, for example. This room is designed for 896 people, but current capacity is 50 beyond the stage, 50 on the stage, and then back there in the auditorium is 50 because there are 3 separate rooms. If that goes to 100, then you start to increase. One of the biggest increases that we will be looking to is under transportation. 26 students currently on a bus is a huge roadblock for us in being able to transport. I mean, we're not a community that has neighborhood schools where most of the kids walk. We are a community that relies heavily on transportation. So that would be the one that I would be more keenly taking a look at, is looking at where our staffing is. But again, purpose of doing a hybrid is to work on those transitions and making sure that we have those safety protocols in place, that maybe the opportunity then arises that we then can open with a greater number of students.
Thank you.
Kate? Since I was Debbie Downer and now you're Mr. Sunshine and everything's great, follow up on that. Is it safe to say that if the state should say, whatever, that it's sunshine and flowers and everybody can come back, is it safe to say that we would then reconvene and have a discussion whether we as a district feel that that is appropriate for our community and not just, woo, let's open the doors?
As much as I'd love to do the balloon surprise and say, yes, we can go ahead and open, transitioning back would require some work because we do have 10% of our population currently choosing to be in a distance model. And so we would need to have some transition time with those students to make sure that they're fully covered. I mean, so we need to have that component. And then in addition, we would just need to make sure that we're fully prepared to have that number of students back in the building. But it will be a transition, and it will take a little bit of time, but I would envision that we would have that discussion as a board, as a public discussion, to make sure that we're following everything and that we're hearing concerns as we're taking that look to open.
Christina?
You had mentioned last week that you were going to be working with your colleagues in Cumberland County to come up with a consensus as to if we had so many cases in our school at a certain time period that we would basically put ourselves in the red. Do you have that information at this time?
No, actually, we talked about it today, and Emily Poland, who's the lead nurse at Maine Department of Education, who's been working with Maine CDC, we've been told that that is imminent, that we'll receive those guidelines. But no, we have not, and I personally have been pushing at the commissioner for that, as have other superintendents across the state, that we need to have that protocol, because it really then begs the question, one case versus 2 cases versus classroom versus all of that. We need that information, we need it now, and we need to be consistent across the state with it.
Okay. I kind of would like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? The motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you all.